Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's your boy JT, and today's video we're going to talk about using the RGB Parade Scope. Okay guys, so I've got a clip here, and this is again just some B-roll from an event that we actually shot, and you've probably seen it in some of the other tutorials, and it's just kind of one of my B-roll clips that I like to use to be able to show you some of these different things as far as exposure and using the RGB Parade Scope. So I've built a basic node tree. We did go through, and the only thing that I've done on this particular node tree is I have done a Rec 709 conversion using the Blackmagic software. I haven't put any LUTs on or anything like that for any kind of targeted looks, but I just kind of got it converted over, and to me this is exactly what I saw while I was actually out shooting this event. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to show you here how we use the RGB Parade, but first let's go in here and make a couple of adjustments. So this shouldn't be new to you guys, because if you've been following, that means you've already kind of come through some of the other tutorials that we did. I think in the last tutorial we went over the Waveform scope, so you were able to see how we can go in and find our trace. So as you can look on here and see, this should give us two actual traces, right? A trace for this talent and a trace for this talent, right? And when you look at this Waveform scope, you can actually see that. Here's where those higher highlights are, where they're up there. I'm gonna say that's this area. This trace right here, this area where there's just an accumulation of pixels and color and light, I'm gonna say that that's our subject here. And then I'm going to say this middle area is more of that highlighted area, probably this super white column. And then I'm going to say this trace right here probably belongs to our second subject. So let's move our playhead and then kind of follow the trace. And remember, like I talked about in the Waveform video, go ahead and look at where your trace is, because that's really where you can kind of begin to say, okay, this is the exposure that I'm most concerned about, because we want our subjects to be able to stand out. So when I see this clumping of information, that accumulation of information there and right there, I can almost pretty much guarantee. So now let's kind of see how it moves. Okay, yep, and you can see how it's moving. See how when her hand goes, see how when her hand moves, look at the trace on the far right. See how as her hand moves to the left, so does that trace. So that lets you know that that is definitely the area. So you can see where the majority of her exposure is at. You see all of this, and so we know at pretty much her highlights for her particular trace is right here about 640 line. Now we know for this talent, her trace is right there slightly above the 640 line. So this is how you read that Waveform scope. Now ideally we're gonna want to make our subjects the most important, the brightest thing in the scene, creatively speaking, for this particular clip. Even though this is not an RGB Parade Scope, if you haven't seen the Waveform Parade Scope video, I'll make sure that we have a card up here so that you can be able to click on it and just go and get you some reference, because we kind of go over it extensively. So in this one, I'm just going to go ahead and make some adjustments. We've got a lot of room we can play with here. Not so much here, but let's take it down some overall by bringing down our lift. We're on our exposure node. Okay, so I'm already liking the contrast in that already. So let's we still have even more room, we can bring it down some, right? Okay, good. Yeah, there we go. All right, we can stand to bring some of our highlights down as well. This is just gonna kind of help to overall improve our image. See, now this is really what we were able to see. So this is what I shot. Okay, this is what I shot. And then this is where we are now as far as the grade. You can see what that change, this change right here has actually done. I think it makes them both be able to pop out a little more. Now we can always be able to come in, and just like I taught you in the layer and the parallel node, and we can come in and we can drag a power window around our subjects, and we can increase their exposure as well. So that's not what we're going to do. What we're going, because this right here, for the purpose of example, this right here is probably enough. Okay, like I said, there's no LUTs or anything. I just did a simple Rec 709 conversion by using a color space transform node and over here in effects. I haven't gotten to that yet, and I don't know who else are shooting with film cameras or prosumer cameras or whatever, but basically, regardless, you kind of want to start out there. It's kind of where you want to start out at your Rec 709 conversion, so that way you can go ahead and jump right into being able to make your exposure changes and then your color balancing. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here to my color node, and then I'm going to switch from the Waveform scope to the RGB Parade. Look at that. Honestly, I probably should have grabbed one that would give us a little more variance in our RGB values, but I mean, this one was shot pretty good. Now, at first glance, what I can see is that my greens are a lot more lifted here. The lift in the green channel are higher than the lift in the blue channel. You see how the blue channels down here in the shadow area, how closely they are approaching that zero line? And you can say the same thing for the red, but then the greens are a little blue. Now, ideally, the RGB Parade Scope is what you would use to either work on your white balance or go in and correct color cast. Because as you can see here, if you've got a little too much green, there's a couple of different things you can do. And your RGB Parade Scope is going to reflect any changes that you make. Okay, so here's our tint. I don't really like to mess around with tint too much unless I'm getting some camera issue error. That's just me personally, but also my temperature, I don't like to mess around with that too much. And I always typically will make a color node because that's what I like to use for my actual color balancing. I'll usually stick to the saturation node that I create when I want to really kind of hit those colors. But first, before I even do that, I want to get everything balanced. So now let's just kind of look at this. Look at the level where the red is above that 896 line. And again, this is my Rec 709. So this, in my head, creatively speaking, this is what I actually saw through my camera while I was shooting. Okay, we can kind of go through here and see. There we go. So we can kind of go through here and see. All right, beautiful ladies. All right. One of the perks of the cameraman. So, okay, let's just keep it right there. All right. So now, again, when I look at this, you look for different similarities as far as the levels in your highlights and in your shadows, and you want to kind of make sure that those are where they need to be balance wise. Okay. Now, remember also, the thing that really matters is the trace. Everything else is controllable, but let's pay close attention to the trace. So where's our trace on here? We know that, remember a little earlier we said we've got two traces or two areas where there's an accumulation of information, right? We have trace 1 right here and trace 2. We have trace 1 right here for our first subject on the left, and trace 2 is going to be for our subject on the right. So when we're looking at this, you can see that the red part of the trace is much higher than the blue and the green over on this side. So you can begin, once you get those levels together, that's when you have a balanced image. That's when you can begin to really say, okay, I've got a little red here. I've got a little extra red here in my color cast. Now, let's go ahead and make a few changes. Let's make a few changes. So let's pull down some of our red channel, and you can either go here or you can actually use the wheel. I mean, I'm just using my mouse here on the MacBook. I don't have a color wheel connected or anything like that. So I'm just going to kind of use that. We'll bring that red down some, and as you bring that red down some, you'll see how you get a lot more green in it. Can you see that green? And look, don't be intimidated. You can't break this. We can't break this. I can always just reset it. This is the first change I've made to the color. So don't worry about breaking it. You've got to play with these and go ahead and don't be timid with it. Go ahead and make those adjustments. I don't care if you bang that joke all the way out like this. Look, you can't break it, right? Hit the reset. We're back where we started, just like that. So you've got to go ahead and kind of get a feel so that you can know how to be able to make these adjustments. So let's bring some of that down to highlights. Okay. All right. And I want to bring some of my blue up. Okay, you can begin to see how this image is beginning to take shape. Okay, now my blue, like when you look at this line right here at the 512 line, you see that 512 line. You see how much more data in that red there is there, and even with the second subject, the red is here. All right, which would be, when you look at their skin tone, you can see that there's a lot of red. Okay, but when you look over here at the green, you can see the difference in that second trace between this part of the trace and this 512 line, and also the blue. The blue is all the way down to the 384. So we've still got some ways to go and some ways to play. And I'm gonna say, here, let's put a little more. Let's go ahead and add a little more blue in our midtones. Okay. See how that deal is coming up some? Let's add a little more blue here a little more green here as well. Okay. And let's bring some of our red down out of our midtones. Look at that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, and the image looks a lot cooler now too, right? Right. So again, like I said, it's creatively, you have so many different things that you can do to be able to get certain looks. I can't remember it being this cool of an image. I believe that it was hot that day. It was also bathing suits and things like that. So let's come over here in the shadows. I'm gonna see if I can pull that down some. Okay, that introduced more green. Okay. Let's see if we can do a little bit lift on our red to pump a little more red down in the shadows. There we go. All right. Same deal here in our mid-tone. Let's push a little bit more red back in there. All right. I'm very, very slight. It's very, very slight. Okay, but you can tell the difference. Now, let's go ahead and put a little bit more of our green in there. Not too much. I'm gonna pull some back. I'm digging this look right here. I'm digging this look. Now, watch this. I'm gonna come over here to this white balance node that I created, and I haven't done anything with the white balance at all. That's just one of my standard nodes that I always create. But let's go in and let's warm it up a little bit. The overall image. So I'm gonna use my temperature right here. I'm gonna use that temperature. Look at that. Oh yeah. So you can see where it begins to pump some of that warmth in there by looking at that red channel, right? Okay. Let's see how far we've come. Okay, shot in the field to there. I'm digging it. I'm loving how this is looking right now, okay? I'm loving how this is looking. Skin tones look natural. The vibe is natural. We can go for a cooler look, or we can even go for a warmer look. It just kind of depends on what it is you want to do. The only thing I'm going to say is that right now there's no separation from our subject and our background outside of a color contrast. You know what I'm saying? So as far as it being a light contrast, there really isn't any. To me, they're kind of the same. So if we wanted to be able to go in, we haven't really gone over this. I have shown you a few things, but later on, what we would do is we would go in and we would actually isolate our subjects, and then we would use our outside node to affect the exposure on just the background for these subjects. Make sure it's nice and soft, and then you can begin to lower the exposure on that background just to make your subjects be able to pop out a lot more. But look, I'm just honestly, when I'm looking at this trace, we pretty much got a balanced look, right? And then we pump a little bit more in here because we've got a couple of caramel fair-skinned ladies in here, so we want to make sure that they do have that, that blood flow that you see, that red in there that you see. And so we do have a little bit more red in there than we have blue and green. And that's by design, because that's what we wanted to have. So now, that is the RGB Parade Scope in a nutshell. I mean, like here, if we click that off, you see the difference. You can see that there's an extreme red color cast over this image. And then you can come here and it's much cleaner. Much cleaner. Now, another thing that you can do is you can use your color wheel. If you want to pull some of that red out, you could also come right here. I'm going to say just either go up and down. I learned to either go up and down or left to right. But you can come here, let's say like in your game, and we'll pull down a little bit to remove some of that red. Okay. Let's add a little bit more in the midtones. Yeah, you can see that. Okay. And look, I think we're good. I'm digging that look. I'm loving that vibe right there. And that pretty much is the RGB Parade Scope. It's not hard. We've learned now where we can be able to find the trace of our subject. And that's what we really are looking at when it comes to making these changes on these scopes. We're looking at the trace. We're making sure that our images are looking exactly the way we want to. Now, watch this. Let's come pump a little color in. Saturation. Well, instead of just bumping this saturation up, I'm going to use this color boost. It's what I like to use, because instead of it just, thrashing super reds, yellows, greens, blues, and things like that, it's going to help us to preserve our skin tones a lot better than just overall saturation. So let's do that. Let's just add a little bit in there. Yeah. There we go. Now we haven't gotten into the hue curve, but we haven't gotten into the hue curve, because we could also very, very easily just come right in and come over into our hue or our saturation, and we could also make adjustments as well. But for right now, this is what it is that we do when we open up our RGB Parade Scope. And there you have it. Guys, that's the RGB scope in a nutshell. I mean, it's not tolerably difficult. It's just one of those things that you just gotta play with and begin to get comfortable. You can't be afraid of making mistakes. It's pretty much, it's just one of those deals where you have to make those adjustments, because creatively everybody sees something different. Go ahead and go with your first gut. Don't try to make it look like anybody else's, especially don't try to make it look like mine, because there's no telling what I'm thinking about whenever I'm doing certain things. It's in this whole deal of being creative, you get a chance to do what you want to do. Let your colors, let your art, let your exposure, let your look, let your layouts, all of that, let it come out in a way that you feel like it should come out. And that's the RGB, that's the RGB Parade. So, I like to go in and do different things with mine, and we're going to cover some of those things in some future tutorials. There's a lot of different ways you can go in and create different looks, and having a great grasp on the RGB Parade Scope will give you that flexibility to be able to make those changes and to get those looks that you want. And so, guys, look, I tell you what, I want to thank you for joining me today here to go over the RGB Parade Scope, and I want to welcome you to the channel. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing. I'm going to keep these tutorials coming. I think that there is a space for people who don't mind watching long form content. I think there's a space for people who don't mind delivering long form content. I said, you know what? I'm constantly working on stuff, and I feel like, especially when I'm just talking shop with some of my boys, some of my partners, we talk about this stuff. We go in, and it's like, we can share some of that, because there's a lot of things that we've learned here over the years that when you first start, you're trying to mimic so many different things that you see on YouTube and on the internet and what you think and it's like, when you really get a good understanding, you don't have to worry about mimicking. You understand how to learn. And once you understand how to learn, and you'll be able to take these different tools and these different pieces of technique, and you'll be able to apply them in a way that it works for you. And that's what this whole thing is about. All of these things are tools, not the cameras, not the lights, not the gear. You learn how to use lighting. You learn how to use what you have. You learn how to bring in what you need to create the looks that you want. You learn how to get the looks you need in camera. You learn the things you need to do to add to your scenes and your sets so that you can get those looks that you want to get in camera. And now we're just going to the next step so that you can be able to creatively express what it is you want others to see. So guys, look, I appreciate you spending this time with me. Look, I had a ball. I think the next one we're going to do is this histogram, which is one of my favorites. And you know why it's one of my favorites? Because typically on every camera, there's a histogram. And so to fully understand it, what it means from left to right and top to bottom, will just really help you to be in full control of your images, even before you get into the editing room. So guys, again, like I said, hey, if you're new here, I want to welcome you. I really appreciate you coming by. If you're not new here, but you're back again, hey, I promise you, and hopefully you feel like I am living up to my promise. And hopefully, guys, this video has brought some added value to you and your content creation. We'll see you in the next one.